Now you might notice that the sparks are actually bouncing off the roof of the car there. That's basically by setting the floor function within particular. Again, it's a pretty standard preset that I've just jiggled about a little bit, but in our physics we've put a bounce function in with the gravity, and we've set a floor which is just here, and that's set to a separate floor that is just above the car layer, so that as it goes through it bounces through. So it's quite effective. So, and then one further particular effect is what I call the streamers, or the missiles. Padum. And I think that's a great effect. Looks really impressive. You have to give them a fair bit of velocity and a good amount of gravity, so basically they will shoot forwards, shoot forwards and then drop pretty quick. And also you might notice that across here it's also drifting sideways, giving it a little bit of wind, so the whole thing is sliding across. Particular is a very fast plug-in, and it's very good, but basically I'm pushing the envelope a bit here because it's producing a hell of a lot of particles, and this does slow it down a fair bit. But to get a decent effect you need to be pushing out a lot of small particles, like all this stuff up here, so that you get a good smoky effect. Otherwise it just looks like blobs. Okay, so now that we've got all of that mixed in, our particular stuff will look something like this. So, and you can see it's starting to come together now. Again, one of the extra things I did was put an additional fireball on top, set to overlay over the top of all of this effect, so that it colours all the effects in. And then once we bung in all our additional lens flares, you will see that it really starts to hot up. So now the lens flares themselves, I've brought them in at various points so that the heat builds up. I'll just demonstrate that here. Main flare is on for a short period of time. That's the initial flash, as when the bomb or whatever actually goes off. So it's relatively short. Then on top of that, there's an additional one here which comes in over the top, which is going to be the source of our explosion, if you will. That's going to hold off for quite a bit longer and fade out there. And then we have a secondary flare which is used to follow the flame as it flies upwards, so that once you have the fireball in place, there it is, then you get that big flame, the initial flash, and then the secondary flare following the explosion as it drifts upwards, just to keep it nice and hot. On its own it's a bit feeble. Like so. The flare itself, you might notice, try to avoid putting too many rings and things in. Just try and keep to the central glow. It doesn't need to be a fancy effect. That way it's really just to enhance the flame rather than look like a serious lens flare distortion, although I have put this one here moving the axis about a little bit, so that is like a real lens flare. The other ones are just glows that are just added on top. Okay. Now going back to our film loops, there's some various other bits and pieces you can put in, such as fire and smoke, which you can get in a loop format. They're quite easy to find freebie on the websites and things like that. If you look around, I've got one here that I've used for smoke. So it's the idea is this smoke here is then pouring up out of the top of the hole once the actual explosion has gone off. The problem is it's a hard edge, so what I need to do is obscure that. So what I've done is I've used particular again to produce some smoke coming up either side of those frames, so that it will obscure these hard lines. It wasn't totally successful, I have to say, and I'm still looking to do other smoke effects to try and get that to work a little better. On top of that, also we want some fire in here to be trickling out, which is basically what I put in here, like so. So now we have a smokier kind of effect once the actual bang has gone off. Now I have to say I never quite convincingly managed to get rid of this line down here, and it's something I'll probably try some other time, softening off the mask to get it to look more realistic. But you get the idea that you've got some kind of aftermath from the bang itself. As I said, the flame and smoke images you can basically bring in, and using the corner pin effect to overlay them into whichever areas you need, you can overlay them. And that's pretty well about it regarding the actual explosion itself. The final thing to add on to it is the reflections, and this is quite tricky, but what you need to do is essentially remove all the background, because we're kind of supposed to be seeing this from the other side. And what I did was I reproduced the effect against black, so it looks something like this. What I've essentially done, this is another comp. I made a comp of the main explosion. I actually reproduced this as another pre-composed video, so the film was already made, and then overlaid it with a mask. So then we had our effect come in, a slight blue screen there, and you can actually see the effect of the stuff coming over the windows. So what you need to do is actually mirror the effect across, so we're actually getting the background of the video going the other way, so it then reflects into the windows. You can see here I've actually used a camera to angle this thing around so that the explosion is actually at a perpendicular to the windows, if you remember your mathematics, geometry. So now basically comped up separately, slightly different angles, different delays, such like, so that once you put them all together, you'll notice that, for instance, the windows will show slightly different effects on here, like so. Yeah. And you have the complete bang. Thank you. And that's about it, I guess. You can always make a final comp and give it a bit of camera shake if you want, just to go with it. And a good sound effect always helps. Kablam. There's your final. If you do decide to have a bash at this yourself, would love to see what you come up with. And yeah, get back to me. My name's Rob Neal. You can get me on www.robneal.co.uk. It's been great talking to you guys, and I hope to speak to you soon. Bye.